"You are too old to be flying off to Hawaii with us. Just stay here and keep an eye on the house," my daughter said, dismissing me so casually it felt like she was swatting away a fly. They boarded a plane for a tropical getaway with her in-laws, people who were actually older than I was, while I remained behind in the very house they already talked about as if it were their future inheritance. By the time they came back, both the house and I would be gone. They would call me 43 times before they understood that. Colorful Hawaii travel brochures were scattered across my coffee table like glossy lies. My daughter, Emily, flipped them open with excitement, her perfectly manicured nails tracing photos of turquoise water and bright white sand. Her husband, Jason, leaned over her shoulder, nodding as though every decision had already been approved. Jason's parents, Robert and Linda Harper, were stretched out comfortably on my couch, talking about flight schedules and hotel perks, as if this vacation belonged to them by divine right. "This resort in Maui is perfect," Emily said eagerly. 4 bedrooms, oceanfront, private beach access. I reached toward one of the brochures. "That actually sounds amazing. When do we—" "Oh, Dad." Emily's hand stopped mine mid-air and gently pushed the brochure away. "You really are not up for that kind of trip anymore." The words hit me like a splash of freezing water. I blinked, convinced I must have misunderstood. "You should just stay here and watch the house," she added, her tone light, as if she were assigning me the easiest chore imaginable. "We are flying with Jason's parents. It has always been their dream vacation." Robert laughed from the couch. "We have been saving for years. Cannot wait to watch those sunsets in person." "The snorkeling is supposed to be incredible," Linda chimed in, already reliving memories that had not even happened yet. I looked at all of them, stunned. Robert was 64, a full 2 years older than I was. Linda was 61. Somehow I was considered too old, while they were ideal travel companions. "I have never been to Hawaii," I said quietly. Jason shrugged. "Maybe another time, old man. This trip is more of a family thing." That word, family, twisted painfully in my chest. They continued planning right through me, around me, as though I were nothing more than part of the furniture. Emily pulled out her phone and showed Linda pictures of restaurants they had researched. Jason picked up another brochure and pointed out helicopter tours and boat excursions. They moved with the confidence of people who had made every decision without consulting the man whose house they lived in, whose generosity had kept a roof over their heads for the past 5 years. "The flight leaves Thursday morning," Emily said, never looking in my direction. "We will be gone for 10 days. You will have the whole place to yourself. Think of it as a vacation, too." "A vacation from what, exactly? From providing free housing? From cooking dinners they barely thanked me for? From listening to Jason complain about his credit score while he used my electricity to power his gaming consoles?" I pushed myself up slowly from the chair. My knees complained, a quiet reminder of my 62 years Emily suddenly found very relevant. "I should probably make sure everything is ready for house-sitting, then," I said. "You are the best, Dad," Emily replied, finally looking at me with a wide smile. It was the same smile she used when she was 7 years old and begging for bedtime stories. Now it felt rehearsed, polished, and transactional. "Do not worry about anything. Just relax and enjoy the peace and quiet." Robert lifted his coffee mug in a joking toast. "To family vacations." They all laughed. Even Linda, who had met me exactly 4 times, felt perfectly comfortable laughing at my exclusion while sitting in my living room. I walked down the hallway as their voices followed me. Excited chatter about sunset dinners, island excursions, and once-in-a-lifetime adventures I had apparently aged out of overnight. The hardwood floor creaked beneath my feet, the same familiar sound it had made years ago when Carol, my wife, and I danced there on our 30th anniversary. Carol would have stood up for me. She would have insisted I come. She would have made it clear that family meant everyone or no one. But Carol had been gone for 5 years now, and I was only beginning to realize that the daughter we raised together did not see me the way I thought she did. From behind me, Emily's voice carried clearly down the hall. Mom would have understood. She always said Dad would need extra looking after as he got older. I stopped in the doorway of my bedroom. Carol had never said anything like that, not once. Yet somehow, my late wife's imaginary words were now being used to justify my exclusion from their happiness. The evening sunlight slanted through my bedroom window, stretching long shadows across the hardwood floor where Carol's old reading chair once sat. 3 hours later, I was still sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing the same clothes I had on at dinner. My reflection stared back at me from Carol's old vanity mirror, a man who had somehow become invisible inside his own home. The house settled into its usual nighttime sounds, soft creaks and distant hums. Voices floated up from the living room below. At first their laughter seemed distant, blurred by the walls and air vents. I planned to ignore it, maybe pick up one of the mystery novels Carol used to love. Then Jason's voice cut through the noise, sharper and clearer than it should have been. I honestly think he bought that whole too-old excuse. The book slipped from my hands and closed with a soft thud. I froze, every muscle tightening at once. Emily's reply drifted up through the heating vent near my feet. "Dad has always been easy to fool," Emily said. "Remember when we promised we would pay him back for the roof repair?" Their laughter followed, light, careless, and cruel. I moved closer to the floor vent, placing each step carefully. Decades in education had trained my instincts well. 30 years of managing classrooms had taught me exactly when to intervene and when to stay silent. This was absolutely a moment to listen. The timing could not have been worse, or more revealing. Then Robert's voice joined the conversation. "Once we get back from Hawaii, we move him into that assisted living place we looked up." My lungs locked. I forgot how to breathe. "An assisted living facility?" Linda asked. "Sunset Grove has an opening next month," she answered calmly, like she was scheduling a dental appointment. "They said if we put down the deposit early, they can rush the paperwork." Jason sounded curious now. "How much are we talking?" $3,000, Robert replied, "but it is worth it to get him placed quickly. Once he is there, the house becomes ours anyway. It is our inheritance." The room tilted. I reached out and grabbed the windowsill to steady myself, my fingers whitening against the painted wood. Emily's voice grew animated. "I already spoke with a real estate agent, Mark Caldwell. He thinks the place could sell for at least $800,000, maybe more with how hot the market is right now." "Split 4 ways?" Jason asked. "Of course," Emily replied smoothly. "Mom and Dad deserve their share after dealing with his moods for all these years." Linda laughed. "He has become rather needy, has he not? Always asking what our plans are, wanting to be included in everything. The entitlement is honestly shocking," Emily added. "Like, Dad, you are 62. You need to accept that your active years are over." My legs gave out. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my body suddenly unreliable. For 5 years I had supported them. 5 years of groceries, utility bills, repairs, maintenance, and quiet sacrifices while Jason searched for work, and Emily tried to decide what she wanted to do next. They ate my food, drove my car, borrowed my tools, and lived under my roof without once offering genuine gratitude. Jason's voice grew louder, energized. The best part is he will never see it coming. He really believes we are just worried about his health. Dad has always trusted too easily, Emily said. Mom used to say. Your mother never said your father was a burden, Robert interrupted, his tone firm and unexpected. That woman adored him. Well, she is not here to argue any more, is she? Emily snapped. And honestly, this is what works best for everyone. Dad gets professional care, and we get financial security. Professional care. They made it sound like compassion instead of convenience. I had heard enough. I stood slowly and crossed the room to my dresser, opening the bottom drawer where I kept Carol's jewelry box. Inside, tucked carefully beneath her wedding ring, was the deed to this house. The home I had purchased with my teaching salary, the place Carol and I planned to grow old together. I looked at myself in the mirror above the vanity. The man staring back at me was not the same one from earlier that evening. He was no longer invisible. I closed the jewelry box softly and returned to the edge of the bed as their voices drifted away toward the another part of the house. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, Jason's desperate voice from years ago clashed with the casual cruelty I had just overheard. February of 2020. The memory came back with brutal clarity. It had been a Tuesday night, just after 11:30. I knew the exact time because I had been grading algebra exams, red pen in hand, when my phone vibrated on the desk. Mr. Thompson? Jason's voice had been shattered, barely holding together. I need help. I have lost everything. The confession spilled out between sobs. Online poker platforms, cryptocurrency schemes promising guaranteed returns, sports betting apps marketed as easy money, $47,000 in credit card debt, their home already in foreclosure. Emily had been crying in the background, pregnant with their second child. It was supposed to be Bitcoin, he whispered. Everyone said it was safe. I put everything into it. Our savings, the equity loan, all of it, right before it crashed. I listened, my heart breaking. Carol had been gone only a few months then, and the house still felt unbearably empty. Emily was my daughter. Those were my grandchildren. We have nowhere to go, Jason continued. Emily's parents, well, you know, her mother never liked me. We cannot ask them. He had been referring to Carol's sister, who had never hidden her dislike for Jason, even at the wedding. Without Carol there to soften family tensions, that door had been closed. Now lying in the dark, I understood how calculated that desperation had been. He knew exactly which wounds to press. The grieving widower, the protective father, the grandfather with an empty house and a generous heart. I rose from the bed and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. Moonlight reflected off the swing set I had installed for the kids, $300 taken straight from my pension. Their bicycles rested against the garage wall, training wheels I had bought and attached myself because Jason was busy job hunting. My hands trembled as I started doing the math. 5 years of groceries for 5 people, at least $18,000. Utilities that nearly doubled once they moved in. Another $6,000. The roof repair Emily mentioned earlier, $14,000 after the storm damage. And now they were planning to erase me. Medical bills piled up during the months their insurance lapsed. Car repairs followed for the vehicle they casually referred to as theirs. The total climbed past $60,000. $60,000 spent on people who now described me as a burden. The math was brutal and impossible to ignore. I had supported them longer than many marriages survived, and somewhere along the way, appreciation had rotted into expectation. I crossed the bedroom and pulled open my dresser drawer, retrieving the small spiral notebook where I had documented household expenses since Carol passed away. Keeping records had been her idea. "You will want to know where the money goes, sweetheart," she had told me once. Page after page told the story. Jason's emergencies, Emily's needs, the children's expenses, each request labeled urgent, each promise framed as temporary, each assurance accompanied by a vow to repay me once things stabilized. Things never stabilized. They simply learned to ask for more. The house creaked softly as it settled into the deep quiet of night. By morning they would wake, rested and energized, focused on departure times and beach weather. They would pack the suitcases I bought them for Christmas, load them into the car I helped finance after their near repossession, and fly away using tickets paid for with money they already considered theirs. I would remain behind, the obedient caretaker, maintaining the property they had quietly claimed as their future asset. But sitting there in the dark, surrounded by framed photos of my teaching awards and Carol's garden club certificates, something hardened inside my chest. They had made a serious mistake. They mistook kindness for weakness, patience for ignorance, generosity for foolishness. 4 decades in education had trained me to think strategically, to anticipate moves, to stay several steps ahead of people who believed they were clever enough to game the system. Some lessons were best taught gently, others required consequence. I closed the notebook and slid it back into the drawer, careful and deliberate. Tomorrow would change things. Morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds when I entered, finding the house already humming with departure energy. Emily stood at the counter, neatly organizing boarding passes and travel documents into labeled stacks. Jason hovered over his phone, likely refreshing flight updates, while Robert and Linda debated sunscreen brands with the seriousness of military planners. "Good morning, Dad," Emily called without looking up. "There is fresh coffee if you want some." I poured myself a cup and studied them closely. Yesterday, I would have seen excited family members preparing for a trip. Today, I saw collaborators congratulating themselves on a successful manipulation. "Our flight leaves at 10:15, Jason announced. "We should head out by 8:30 to avoid traffic." "Did you pack the camera charger?" Linda asked. "Yes, and extra batteries," Emily replied confidently. Their efficiency was impressive. The same efficiency they never applied to employment searches or contributing to household expenses. Apparently, luxury travel demanded a level of organization basic responsibility never inspired. "Is there anything special you need me to do while I am house-sitting?" I asked, taking my usual seat at the breakfast table. Emily finally looked at me, her smile tight and patronizing. "Just the normal things, Dad. Water the plants, bring in the mail, maybe have Margaret Collins from next door check in on you." Margaret Collins, my 70-year-old neighbor who had known Carol and me for over 15 years. Emily spoke as if I were frail and unsupervised. "I am fully capable of managing on my own," I replied evenly. Jason laughed under his breath. "Sure. Just do not try fixing anything if it breaks. Call a professional." The irony hit hard. A man who lost his home to gambling debts, advising me on responsible home ownership. I sipped my coffee and nodded. I would not want to cause trouble. My agreement seemed to reassure them. Robert folded a tourist map of Maui and tucked it into his pocket. 2 weeks of paradise. We earned this. Earned. 5 years of free housing, food, and financial support suddenly translated into entitlement. The time will pass quickly, I said calmly. I may catch up on reading, maybe organize a few areas of the house. Emily's face brightened. That would be great, Dad. You could start with the garage. It has gotten so cluttered. Cluttered with their belongings, of course. Boxes they stored there when they moved in and never reclaimed, turning my garage into their private storage unit. Linda transferred documents into her purse. Boarding passes, identification, travel insurance confirmations. She mentioned the resort upgrade, ocean view, private balcony, concierge service. That sounds lovely, I said, quietly calculating the cost. Easily $4,000 for the stay, money they had never had, yet now wielded confidently. Jason's phone chimed. The ride is 5 minutes away. Sudden motion filled the house. Suitcases appeared, shoes were grabbed, organization dissolved into chaos. I stood back, watching with detached clarity. Dad, you will be all right here alone? Emily asked, her tone polite but hollow. I will enjoy the peace, I answered. She kissed my cheek. Once that gesture would have meant something. Now it felt rehearsed, performed for an audience that expected the appearance of affection. I watched them leave, knowing they believed the plan was already complete. They had no idea how wrong they were. Car doors slammed in the driveway as the final scramble unfolded. Jason wrestled suitcases into the trunk, while Emily and her parents gathered last-minute items from around the house. In less than 10 minutes, the place would return to the silence they claimed wanted. Take care of yourself, Robert called, as he rolled his suitcase toward the door. Drive safely, I answered, and I meant it, despite everything. The front door shut with a firm, final click. An engine started. Tires rolled away. The sound faded down the street until there was nothing left but stillness. I stood alone in my kitchen, surrounded by half-empty coffee mugs and glossy travel brochures scattered across the counter. For the first time in 5 years, the house was entirely mine again. I walked to the window and watched their car disappear around the corner, carrying my ungrateful family toward a paradise they believed they had earned. 2 weeks, 14 days to think clearly, assess my options, marshal my resources, and prove that the burden they dismissed was far more capable than they imagined. I finished my coffee slowly, already mapping out my next move. Need a ride to the airport? I had asked earlier, as Jason struggled with Emily's oversized suitcase. Actually, yes, he said, out of breath. The ride service just canceled. There is a traffic backup on the interstate. Perfect. One last performance as the helpful, accommodating father. The drive to the airport took 45 minutes through typical Friday morning congestion. I listened quietly as they talked about snorkeling trips, beachfront dinners, and sunset cruises, marveling at how effortlessly they discussed luxuries funded by my lifetime of work. Make sure you take pictures, I told them at the passenger drop-off zone. I would love to see the island through your eyes. Emily gave me a brief hug. We will send postcards, Dad. Do not work too hard while we are gone. Jason lifted the heaviest suitcase. Thanks for the ride, Pops. You saved us. Saved. The irony was sharp enough to sting. I waited until they disappeared into the terminal before pulling away, a sense of anticipation growing with every mile back home. By 11 o'clock, I was dialing the number Emily had mentioned during that conversation she never meant for me to hear. Summit Realty, this is Evan Brooks speaking. Mr. Brooks, my name is David Parker. I need to sell my house as quickly as possible. There was a brief pause. How quickly are we talking, Mr. Parker? 2 weeks at most. I am willing to price aggressively for a fast sale. That is a tight timeline. What is driving the urgency? I had already prepared my answer. Personal circumstances require immediate liquidity. I understand. Speed usually means some trade-offs. Where's the property located? A quiet neighborhood outside Asheville. Single-family home. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms. Clear title, no mortgage. His tone shifted instantly. No mortgage changes everything. What is the square footage? Just under 3,000 square feet. Updated kitchen. New roof 5 years ago. Established area. Mr. Parker, I can be there within the hour if that works for you. The timeline is ambitious but not impossible with the right buyer. An hour works, I said. In 60 minutes I would take the first tangible step toward showing them exactly how dangerous it was to underestimate me. I will be here, I confirmed. After ending the call, I walked slowly through the house, seeing it with new eyes. These rooms held echoes of Carol's laughter, Emily's childhood milestones, family holidays that once felt genuine. Back when I believed family meant loyalty and mutual respect. Now they represented something else entirely. Assets, equity, leverage. I retrieved the deed from Carol's jewelry box, along with tax records and insurance documents. Everything Evan would need to confirm ownership and determine market value. The doorbell rang exactly 1 hour later. Evan Brooks stood on my porch. Younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, wearing a lightweight blazer despite the summer heat. He carried a tablet and measuring tape, all business. Mr. Parker? He shook my hand. Based on our phone call, I think we can move quickly. May I come in? Of course, I said. I will show you everything. He stepped into the foyer, already scanning the space. Beautiful home. Original hardwood floors. Refinished 5 years ago? I replied. My wife insisted we preserve the character. She had excellent taste. Original features add real value. He tapped notes into his tablet. For your timeline, we will need cash buyers, minimal contingencies, and a competitive price. Are you comfortable with that? Speed matters more than squeezing out every dollar, I said. Good. Then let us get started. As Evan measured rooms and noted details, something shifted inside me. After years of reacting to other people's plans, I was finally directing my own future. Emily had spoken his name casually, planning to sell my home without my knowledge. Now he was here at my request, working on my terms. The balance was beginning to tilt. 3 hours after Evan left, with a preliminary valuation and a promise to start calling buyers immediately, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the area code was unmistakable. Hawaii. Dad! Emily's voice burst through the speaker, bright with excitement. We landed safely. You would not believe this place. It is absolutely incredible. I lowered myself into one of the kitchen chairs, Evan's business card still resting on the counter beside his neatly organized folder of property documents. I am relieved you arrived safely, I said evenly. How was the flight? Long, but completely worth it, Emily replied, her voice buzzing with excitement. Dad, you would not believe this place. Private beach, infinity pool, spa services everywhere. Jason already booked a helicopter tour for tomorrow. That sounds incredible, I said, running my finger along the edge of Evan's card. I hope you take plenty of pictures. Oh, we will, she laughed. The concierge recommended this unbelievable restaurant for tonight. 5-star dining right on the beach. Honestly, you would probably think it is too fancy, but we are thrilled. Too fancy for me, of course, I replied calmly. I am sure you will enjoy every minute. Her tone softened, shifting into something almost parental. How are you doing there by yourself? You're not trying to cook complicated meals, are you? Remember what I said about keeping things simple. I am managing very well, I assured her, my gaze drifting over the real estate paperwork spread across the table. Actually, I have been keeping quite busy. Good. Just do not overdo it, she said. We worried about leaving you alone, but Jason reminded me that you need to learn independence at your age. Independence. The word carried a quiet, satisfying irony, considering how I had spent my morning. Speaking of independence, Emily continued, lowering her voice slightly, we have been talking about something. We are actually preparing a little surprise for you when we get back. Something that will really help your future. My fingers tightened around the phone. A surprise? I do not want to ruin it, she said quickly, but let us just say we have found a way to help you transition into your later years more comfortably. Professional care, activities with people your own age, that sort of thing. Professional care. The same sanitized phrase they used while planning to remove me from my own life. How considerate, I replied, carefully steadying my voice. That is interesting timing, actually. I am preparing a surprise for you as well. She laughed. Oh? What kind of surprise could you possibly be planning, Dad? If I told you, it would not be a surprise, I said, allowing myself a faint smile. Let us just say I have been handling some important business while you are away. Very important business, the kind that changes everything. Business? She said, sounding confused. Dad, you are retired. What kind of business could you possibly... She stopped herself. I mean, that is sweet, but do not exhaust yourself with whatever little project you are working on. Little project. If she only knew. Do not worry about me, I replied calmly. Everything is under control. In fact, I think you will be stunned by what I have accomplished by the time you return. Well, just be careful, she said. We will call again in a few days to check on you. I will be here, I answered, knowing full well that here might soon mean something very different. After the call ended, I sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by afternoon light and the heavy symmetry of mutual deception. Emily believed she was arranging my quiet disappearance into an assisted living facility, confident I would never uncover their plan. Meanwhile, I was dismantling the foundation of their entitlement, preparing to sell the house they already viewed as theirs, certain they would never expect decisive action from the man they labeled a burden. Both sides planned surprises. Both sides believed they held the advantage. Only one of us actually did. I picked up Evan's business card and allowed myself a small, deliberate smile. The real work was about to begin. Sunday morning arrived with a call from Evan precisely at 9 o'clock. He informed me that our first potential buyer would be stopping by shortly. This schedule is extremely tight, Evan cautioned quietly before the appointment. Most buyers need weeks to arrange financing. This gentleman works exclusively in cash, but he will expect flexibility on price. Cash. Exactly what I needed. The buyer arrived in a silver luxury sedan, dressed in expensive casual clothing and carrying a leather portfolio. Michael Grant, mid-50s, confident handshake, the unmistakable presence of someone accustomed to acquiring property efficiently. Nice area, he said, surveying the front yard with an investor's eye. Solid structure. Walk me through the highlights. I guided him through the house room by room, pointing out the refinished hardwood floors, the updated kitchen, the newer roof. Each description felt like a quiet betrayal of Carol's memory, but I pushed forward with steady resolve. The primary bedroom gets excellent natural light, I said, opening blinds Carol had selected more than a decade earlier. Original crown molding throughout the home. Michael nodded, making notes on his tablet. What is motivating the sale? Evan mentioned urgency. I have personal circumstances that require immediate liquidity. I replied evenly. I am willing to price competitively for a fast closing. How competitive? That depends on how quickly you can move. The walkthrough lasted barely 30 minutes. Michael evaluated everything with professional detachment, calculating rental yield, renovation costs, and long-term appreciation. The fundamentals are strong, he said finally, shaking my hand near the front door. I will run the numbers with my partners and get back to you. As he left, I felt no regret, only clarity. You will hear from me by tomorrow afternoon, Michael said before ending the call. After he left, I allowed myself a cautious sense of optimism. A cash buyer, a professional process, a realistic timeline. For the first time since overhearing their plan, it felt like my strategy might actually unfold without complications. That hope lasted until Monday afternoon. I am sorry, Mr. Parker, Michael said over the phone. After reviewing the numbers, the property does not meet our investment parameters at your current asking price. My stomach sank. What price would meet those parameters? Roughly $60,000 less, he replied. The rental market in that area does not justify a higher acquisition cost. $60,000, almost exactly what I had poured into Emily's family over the past 5 years. That is significant, I said carefully. I understand, he replied. Take some time to think it over. The offer will remain open for 48 hours. When the call ended, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at Evan's business card as if it might give me answers. Was I really prepared to walk away from $60,000 out of principle? Was proving my independence worth that kind of financial sacrifice? For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Emily was still my daughter. Jason, flawed as he was the father of my grandchildren. Maybe I was reacting emotionally. Hurt pride, wounded feelings, exaggerated outrage. Then I remembered their laughter drifting up through the vents, the casual cruelty with which they planned my removal while eating my food and sleeping under my roof, the nursing home deposit already discussed, the real estate agent contacted behind my back. 5 years ago they had made their decision. I was not family to them. I was a resource, and resources were meant to be extracted. I picked up my phone and dialed Evan without hesitation. I accept Michael's offer, I said plainly. There was a pause. Mr. Parker, are you sure? That is a substantial reduction. We may still find. I am sure. All right, he said carefully. With cash and limited contingencies, we could close in 8 days, possibly sooner. 8 days. Plenty of time before they returned. Prepare the paperwork, I said. When the call ended, something settled deep in my chest. A cold, steady certainty. The kind that comes when a decision is final. They wanted to treat me like a burden. Fine. They would learn exactly how costly that burden could be. The house they planned to inherit would vanish. The money they expected would never materialize. And my willingness to fund their comfortable stagnation would disappear along with it. Some lessons, I reflected, were worth every dollar they cost. Wednesday morning brought confirmation that my earlier doubts had been misplaced. Evan called with barely concealed excitement in his voice. Mr. Parker, I have exceptional news. Michael's firm wants to accelerate the process. They are offering an additional $10,000 above the agreed price for a guaranteed 7-day close. I set my coffee cup down slowly. They are offering more money to move faster? Yes. They have capital deadlines to meet, and your property aligns perfectly with their quarterly acquisition goals. They want to close by next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, 5 days before Emily's return from Hawaii. What do you need from me? I asked. Very little. They are waiving inspection contingencies and paying entirely in cash. We need signatures and final title clearance. Their attorney has already started the paperwork. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard, where my grandchildren once played on equipment I had paid for myself. Soon, other children would run across that grass, while their parents paid rent to an investment firm. "Are you comfortable with the accelerated timeline?" Evan asked. Comfortable did not begin to cover it. "Yes," I said calmly. "Tell me what I need to sign." "I will bring the documents this afternoon. Their attorney will review everything tomorrow, and we can schedule closing for Monday." After hanging up, I sat alone in the quiet house, surrounded by decades of memories that would soon belong to strangers. The symmetry was almost poetic. Michael's business urgency aligned perfectly with my timeline for justice. Meanwhile, Emily and her family were likely stretched out on a Hawaiian beach, sipping cocktails and congratulating themselves on their clever nursing home arrangement. They probably felt confident, secure, certain that their plan would unfold without resistance. They had no idea how thoroughly they had been outmaneuvered. My phone rang again. Unknown number, Hawaiian area code. "Dad," Jason said this time, his voice relaxed. "Just checking in. How are you holding up?" "Better than ever," I replied honestly. "Taking care of business just like I said I would." He chuckled. "Good. You are not getting into trouble, are you?" "Nothing I cannot manage," I assured him. "How is paradise?" "Unreal," he said. "The helicopter tour yesterday was incredible. Emily is at the spa right now. She asked me to say hello." "Tell her I said hello," I replied. "I hope you are enjoying every moment." "We are," he said. "The kids love the beach. Mom and Dad are talking about extending the trip if we can change flights." "Extending the trip. Even better." "That sounds wonderful," I said. "Do not rush back on my account." "You sure?" he asked. "We do not want to leave you alone too long." I smiled to myself, staring at the silent kitchen around me. "Take your time," I said gently. "Everything here is completely under control." "I am doing just fine," I said evenly. "Honestly, I am handling everything better than you probably expect." After Jason ended the call, I smiled to myself, appreciating the flawless symmetry of it all. They were so confident in their plan, so certain I would remain compliant, grateful, and passive, that they were actually considering giving me even more time to complete my own strategy. By the time they returned to Florida, whether in 10 days or 14, they would learn that their inheritance had vanished and their obedient house sitter had transformed into something far more formidable than the frail burden they had dismissed. I picked up Evan's business card again, running my thumb along its edges. Monday could not arrive fast enough. By Thursday morning, I began what would become the most satisfying project of my retirement, removing my ungrateful family from the house they had already claimed as theirs. I worked carefully and methodically, starting with Emily's bedroom. 5 years of accumulated belongings covered every surface. Expensive clothing purchased with money I had spent on groceries. Jewelry I had given her for birthdays and holidays. Photographs from vacations I had paid for, but had not been invited to attend. Each item went neatly into labeled boxes. "I am treating this like the move you never expected," I murmured, folding her designer blouses with the same care I had used decades earlier when helping her pack for college. Jason's possessions told a different story, one of entitlement and recklessness. Thousands of dollars worth of gaming equipment, cryptocurrency manuals, gambling guides, tools he borrowed and never returned. I packed everything systematically, including the laptop that likely played a role in destroying their financial stability. The storage facility I selected was about 20 minutes away, close enough to be accessible, far enough to feel final. The manager, a kind woman named Rosa, helped me choose a unit large enough to hold an entire household. "Moving can be stressful," she said as I signed the rental agreement. "You seem very organized." "I have had time to think," I replied truthfully. Loading everything took most of the afternoon. The professional movers I hired handled each box with respect, understanding that family belongings deserved care, regardless of the circumstances. Watching box after box disappear into the storage unit felt like watching justice take physical shape. Robert and Linda's belongings required special attention. Medications, important paperwork, the expensive luggage they purchased specifically for this trip. I cataloged everything carefully, making sure their possessions would be easy to locate when they eventually realized where they now lived. "That is a lot of stuff," said Miguel, one of the movers, as he secured the final pieces of furniture. "Big family?" "Was," I replied simply. The last box contained Emily's childhood keepsakes, school awards, art projects, old photographs I had saved for decades. My hands trembled slightly as I placed it inside the unit. These items represented the daughter I raised, not the woman who planned my removal. After locking the unit, I handed Rosa an envelope containing 6 months of prepaid rent. "They will come for it eventually," I said, "probably sooner than they think." By evening, my house no longer felt like home. It was clean, empty, and ready for new owners. My personal belongings remained. My teaching certificates still hung on the walls. Carol's photographs rested on the mantel. The books that shaped 40 years of thought lined the shelves. Everything else was gone. The apartment I rented nearby was modest but adequate. 1 bedroom, a small kitchenette, enough space for a man relearning independence. As I hung my clothes in the narrow closet, I felt something I had not experienced in years, total control over my surroundings. No one would eat my food without contributing. No one would drain my utilities while complaining about my existence. No one would plan my future without my consent. My phone rang as I unpacked my teaching awards. Hawaii area code. "Dad?" Emily's voice sounded relaxed, likely calling from a balcony overlooking the ocean. "Just checking in. How are you doing?" I glanced around my quiet apartment, then at the house keys that would soon belong to Michael Grant's investment firm. "Extremely well," I said honestly. "Everything is exactly where it should be." "That is good to hear," she said. "We are having an incredible time. The concierge set up a private beach dinner tonight." "Enjoy every second," I replied. "Make memories that last a lifetime." Because after Monday, memories would be all they had left of the comfort they built on my generosity. After ending the call, I sat in my new kitchen, drinking coffee and reflecting on the elegant justice of it all. They wanted me removed from their lives. Now they would learn what absence truly meant. Some lessons required full immersion to be understood. Monday morning arrived heavy with inevitability. I sat in a notary office, surrounded by documents that would legally finalize everything. Across from me, Michael Grant reviewed the paperwork with the calm efficiency of a man accustomed to acquisitions. For the first time in years, I felt neither afraid nor uncertain, only resolved. "Everything appears to be in order," Linda Martinez said calmly, arranging the closing documents into perfectly aligned rows. "Mr. Parker, I will need to verify your identification one last time." I handed her my driver's license and watched as she compared the photograph to my face. 62 years old, retired mathematics teacher, moments away from finalizing the most deliberate decision of my life. "Mr. Grant," she continued, turning slightly, "your company's certified funds have been verified. We can proceed with the closing." Michael Grant sat across the table, composed and businesslike. Evan Brooks sat nearby with his tablet, visibly satisfied. In just 7 days, he had orchestrated what normally took weeks, a reminder of what cash, urgency, and a motivated seller could accomplish. "The deed transfer comes first," Linda explained, sliding the paperwork toward me. "This document officially transfers ownership of 847 Maple Street from David Parker to Pinnacle Investment Holdings." 847 Maple Street, the house where Carol and I planned to grow old, where Emily took her first steps, where decades of laughter, holidays, and memories were embedded in the walls. Now it would become a line item on a corporate balance sheet. I signed my name without hesitation. "Next is the property disclosure statement," Linda continued. "These pages confirm the condition of the home and any known issues." Known issues. I almost smiled. Emotional betrayal did not register as a structural defect, and years of ingratitude did not compromise the foundation. I initialed each page carefully. "The financial settlement sheet," Michael said, sliding another document across the table. "Final purchase price minus closing costs, legal fees, and commissions." The numbers spoke plainly. A $60,000 reduction to ensure speed, agent fees, title insurance, legal expenses. Even so, the final figure represented more money than I had seen in one place since Carol's life insurance payout 5 years earlier. Money that would secure my independence while Emily's family confronted a reality they never planned for. "Your signature here makes the sale legally binding," Linda said, pointing to the final line. I paused. Once I signed, there would be no undoing it. Emily and Jason would return from Hawaii to discover their assumed inheritance no longer existed. Their carefully constructed dependence on my generosity would end permanently. I signed. The pen moved smoothly, the same steady handwriting I used to grade papers for 4 decades. "Congratulations," Michael said, standing and extending his hand. "Pinnacle Investment Holdings is pleased to add this property to our portfolio." We shook hands, the retired teacher and the investment executive, finalizing a transaction that would upend 4 people currently sipping cocktails in paradise. "Commission payment," Evan said, accepting his check. "Thank you both for trusting me with this process." Linda gathered the documents and applied her notarial seal with practiced precision. "This concludes the closing," she said. "Mr. Parker, you have 30 minutes to retrieve any remaining personal items. After that, possession transfers to Pinnacle Investment Holdings." 30 minutes. 30 minutes to say goodbye to the house where I had been happy, where I had been used, and where I finally learned the difference between family and exploitation. I drove back to 847 Maple Street one final time, using keys I would surrender shortly. Walking through the empty rooms, I felt something I had not experienced since Carol passed away. Closure. The living room where Emily announced I was too old to travel. The kitchen where I overheard their nursing home plan. The bedroom where betrayal hardened into resolve. Each room now belonged to Michael Grant's company, which would rent them to tenants who paid for the privilege. I removed Carol's photograph from the mantel and my teaching certificates from the walls. Everything else, furniture, appliances, fixtures, now belonged to the new owners by agreement. Standing in the foyer where I welcomed Emily's family 5 years earlier, I felt the full weight of transformation. The generous widower who offered sanctuary had evolved into something far more strategic. The burden they planned to discard had discarded them instead. My phone buzzed. A text message. Hawaii area code. Dad, having an amazing time. Jason suggested we extend the trip another week. Hope you do not mind the extra alone time. Love, Emily. Another week. They were giving me even more time to enjoy the outcome. I locked the front door for the last time and handed the keys to Michael, who waited in the driveway beside Evan. Property transfer complete, I said evenly. As I drove away from 847 Maple Street, I caught sight of Michael in my rearview mirror, already on his phone discussing rental preparations. 4 days until my family returned. 4 days until they learned what it meant to underestimate the man they labeled a burden. The countdown had begun. 2 weeks after my family flew to Hawaii, I sat in a beachfront hotel room in Maui, coffee in hand, waiting for Elizabeth Thompson's call. The irony was impossible to miss. I was finally enjoying the Hawaiian vacation they said I was too old to handle, paid for entirely by selling the house they had already counted as their inheritance. My phone rang at exactly 4 o'clock, Florida time, Florida. David? Elizabeth Thompson's voice quivered with barely contained excitement. They are back. I set my coffee cup down on the small table by the window and watched palm fronds sway gently outside my hotel room. How did they react? I asked calmly. Oh my goodness, Elizabeth said. You should have seen Emily's face when she realized strangers were living in your house. She kept insisting there had been some mistake, that they belonged there. I smiled slowly, imagining Emily's practiced confidence colliding headfirst with reality. What did the new owners tell them? They were very professional, Elizabeth replied. They showed them the deed and explained they had legally purchased the property. Emily actually tried to push past them to get inside. The image of my daughter desperately trying to reclaim what had never been hers filled me with a deep, quiet satisfaction. And Jason? Angry. Very angry. He started shouting about lawyers and lawsuits until the owners said they would call the police if he did not calm down. Elizabeth paused. Linda was crying. Robert kept asking where you went. Did you give them the storage facility address? I asked. Just like you instructed, she said. I handed Emily the paper and told her their belongings were safe. She crumpled it in her fist and demanded to know where you were. I leaned back in my chair, watching a cruise ship drift slowly across the ocean horizon. And what did you tell them? Exactly what you asked me to say. Elizabeth replied, that you sold the house, left town, and they could contact you directly if they needed to discuss anything. Have they tried calling me? Oh, constantly, she said. Emily has been calling every 10 minutes for the past hour. Jason left several very colorful voicemails. I glanced at my phone. 43 missed calls and counting. I imagine they are feeling motivated, I said. David? Elizabeth hesitated, then laughed softly. Are you really in Hawaii? I am, I confirmed. The Grand Wailea, the same place they planned to stay without me. I let the silence stretch. Elizabeth, thank you, I added. I know this put you in an awkward position. After watching them treat you like their personal bank account for 5 years, she said firmly. Honestly, I am proud of you. Carol would be proud, too. She was right. Carol would have appreciated the mathematical elegance of it all, an equal and opposite reaction to years of exploitation. What are they doing now? I asked. The last thing I saw was them loading suitcases into a taxi. Elizabeth said, probably heading to a hotel since they have nowhere else to go. Emily looked absolutely devastated. Devastated. The same word I would have used to describe how I felt when I overheard their nursing home plans. "Elizabeth, if they ask you to call me again," I said gently, "please tell them I am enjoying my vacation and will reach out when I am ready." "How long will you let them wait?" "Long enough for them to understand what it feels like to be discarded by family." After we hung up, I stepped onto the balcony and breathed in the warm ocean air they believed I was too fragile to appreciate. Below me, tourists laughed on the beach I was supposedly unfit to enjoy. Helicopters buzzed overhead, carrying passengers on adventures Jason claimed were beyond my years. My phone vibrated again. Emily. I let it ring. Then Jason. Ignored. A text from Linda. "David, please call us. We need to talk." I deleted it, without responding. For 5 years, they controlled my life through emotional pressure and financial dependence. They planned my future without consulting me, assumed my obedience without asking, and treated my generosity as entitlement. Now, I controlled the terms. They could wait until I decided they had learned enough humility to earn my attention. I ordered room service and watched the sunset they tried to deny me. My phone buzzing relentlessly with calls from the family who had finally discovered the price of taking someone for granted. Some lessons required total powerlessness to truly sink in. They were about to become very good students. Later that evening, I boarded a flight bound for Honolulu, using proceeds from the house sale to purchase a first-class seat, the kind they decided I was too old to deserve. As the aircraft lifted into the Florida sunset, I settled into leather comfort and looked at my phone again. 43 missed calls, 17 voicemails, and growing. Each notification represented another crack in the entitlement they had carried for years. I scrolled through the call log slowly. Emily, Jason, Linda, Robert. Emily again, Jason again. Panic, unfolding in neat digital timestamps. The first voicemail, left barely 20 minutes after Elizabeth's call, played automatically. "Dad," Emily's voice snapped, sharp and commanding. "I do not know what game you are playing, but this is not funny. Call me back immediately." By the 10th voicemail, the anger finally broke through Jason's carefully controlled tone. "This is insane, David," he snapped. "You cannot just sell our house without telling us. We are getting lawyers involved." By message 15, the fury had dissolved into panic. Linda's voice trembled through the speaker, thick with tears. "Please, David, we do not understand what is happening. Where are you? We need to talk." The final voicemail came just minutes before my plane pushed back from the gate. Emily's voice sounded nothing like the confident woman who once dismissed me as too old to matter. "Dad, please," she whispered. "Answer the phone. We will do anything. Just call us back. We have nowhere to go." Nowhere to go. The exact phrase they planned to use when discussing my future in a nursing home. As the aircraft climbed toward cruising altitude, I gazed out at the shrinking constellation of Florida lights below. Somewhere in that glow, my family sat cramped in a hotel room, frantically dialing a number that would remain unanswered until I decided they had learned the correct lesson. A flight attendant stopped beside my seat with a silver tray. "Celebrating anything special tonight, Mr. Parker?" "Independence Day," I said, accepting the champagne flute, about 40 years overdue. 9 hours stretched ahead of me. 9 hours of Pacific Ocean separating me from their panic. 9 hours to savor the complete reversal of power that had defined my life since Carol passed away. I opened my laptop and began writing an email I had no intention of sending. I listed every slight, every act of casual cruelty, every dismissive comment about my age, my usefulness, my supposed fragility. The process felt oddly therapeutic, like grading the most important assignment of my teaching career. But explanations were premature. Explanations came after consequences, after humility replaced entitlement, after remorse replaced anger. My phone vibrated again. Call number 44, Emily. I watched her name glow on the screen, then disappear as the call rolled into voicemail. The cycle continued throughout the flight. Calls, messages, silence. While I enjoyed a meal service they assumed I was too old to appreciate. Outside the window, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly, black water flecked with starlight like scattered diamonds. We crossed time zones, leaving their crisis further behind with every mile. By the time I reached Honolulu, they would be waking up to their second morning without a home, their second day learning what it felt like to be discarded by family. I deleted the unsent email and closed my laptop. Some lessons could not be taught with words. They required consequence. They required immersion. My family was enrolled now, discovering what it meant to need someone who no longer needed them. The math teacher in me admired the symmetry. 5 years of exploitation balanced by however long it took for genuine remorse to emerge. 5 years of taking me for granted repaid by days spent realizing nothing should ever be assumed again. As the plane carried me toward a Hawaiian sunrise, I finally understood what Carol meant when she said it was important to know where money went. Mine had gone toward the most expensive and most valuable education my family would ever receive. My phone showed 46 missed calls when I finally turned it face down and drifted to sleep, 30,000 feet above the consequences they created, heading toward the paradise they believed I was too old to enjoy.